Hello, and welcome to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efrain Martinez. I am a principal in search of wisdom, and I have found productivity to be a great tool for success. Today, I have with me Dr. Matthew B. Courtney, who is an educator, researcher, and TEDx speaker focused on evidence based education and research used in schools. And the title of this special edition episode is Education Leadership Empowered by AI with Dr. Matthew Courtney. Dr. Courtney, how are you?
Hi, good morning, Dr. Martinez. Thank you for having me back on your show.
Oh, it's such a luxury. And I know we had an episode on your wisdom and productivity, but for those who have not seen your episode, can you tell us about who you are?
So I am an educator and a researcher, and I've dedicated my career to evidence-based decision making, really helping our classroom, school, and system level leaders learn how to use research to make better informed decisions for their classrooms.
Beautiful. It's such a needed thing. I think often we miss so much of the research because the culture of the educator is not connected to the research that is being used to design overall policies. So I am so grateful that there's people like you who work on this. In today's episode, particularly, we're going to talk about your venture in supporting educators on adapting AI. So let me start with the first question. What inspired you to create the Leading with AI, a new era of educational decision making course?
I work with leaders at the school, classroom, and system level all over the country, and I hear from them time and time again that they want to use evidence, but it takes too long. They don't have the time, they don't have the access, they might not have the infrastructure to really use it and do that work meaningfully. And we're just living in this period where artificial intelligence tools are just growing exponentially. It seems like a new one is released every half hour. And so I thought, what if we got all these tools together? I could sift through the noise, pick out 15 or 20 of the best ones for research use, and pull them together into one spot. And so that's what I've done in this course. I've pulled these tools together, created some structure around it so that our leaders can really identify which tools are going to be most meaningful for them, get some hands-on experience, and then begin to apply them in their professional practice.
Wow. So I thought there was only ChatGPT. There's more?
There's so many tools. A lot of them are connected to and inspired by ChatGPT, but AI isn't really new. We've been living in an era of AI for a long time. You've been interacting with AI much more than you probably realize. A lot of the sort of customer service chatbots that you see online, those have been artificial intelligence for a long time. Artificial intelligence has chosen the price of your airplane ticket for years. And so there's a lot of tools that people aren't aware of. They don't have the big budgets, they don't have the media coverage. And that's what this course is all about, really helping to make those connections.
Wow, thank you so much. I all this time I thought it was only ChatGPT. I have seen a couple apps here and there, but I'm so excited that there's so much more to discover. So, Matthew, can you elaborate on how this course helps educational leaders conquer the complexities of evidence-based decision making?
So evidence-based decision making is hard for a lot of us, right? Because we don't get very good training in our preparation programs on how to really use evidence. I have a doctorate degree, I have an education specialist degree, I have my principal licenses and several other administrative licenses. And I really came out of those programs and didn't know how to use evidence on my own. And I had to go through a deep, intensive personal study to learn that. And so this course is really designed to help expedite that process for leaders who see the benefit and value of using evidence to make decisions, but don't really know where to start. It's a great entry point because it takes away a lot of the technical skills. One of the brilliant things about artificial intelligence is that it can do a lot of that technical work for us. It can search the literature for us. It can clean out the data. It can create the analysis algorithm on its own. And so we don't have to have all of those deep skills, those deep technical skills in order to really use those tools to get new information. And what we can do is we can take that information and apply our professional skills and our professional knowledge to really use it in a meaningful way. The course is structured really with four key components in mind: data analysis, research synthesis, ethical use, and sustainable systems. So as you go through the course, you're going to learn not only what the tools are and how to use them, but how to use them correctly and how to build them into your processes so that research use isn't an extra thing that you do in your school. It just becomes how we do business here.
Wow. For those who don't know what the heck we're talking about, can you tell us a basic example on how, I don't know, something that is research based that a typical classroom teacher might benefit from?
Sure. So this spring, I taught a group of professionals in an 8-week professional development session on research use. And one of the teachers, classroom teacher, a high school classroom teacher in that program, was really struggling with cell phone use in her classroom. I think that's something that we're all struggling with right now. So especially post-pandemic environment, cell phones are really a scourge, causing a lot of trouble. And she had hung a shoe organizer on the back of her door, and the kids were putting their cell phones in the shoe organizer. But it wasn't really working for her. It was creating a lot of anxiety in her kids, and she couldn't figure out what was going on with that. And so she decided to explore that more deeply during our time together in our course. And what she found was that in the literature, she found that kids were so emotionally attached to their phones that when they couldn't see it because it was in that shoe carrier, it was causing them just so much emotional distress that they couldn't learn, they couldn't pay attention, they couldn't participate. And so, you know what she did? She swapped it for a clear shoe carrier so that the kids could see their phones, that they could know it was there, be connected to it visually, and could get it at the end of the day. Solved her classroom management problems immediately. And so that's the
Wow.
kind of thing that is so small. It's so small to most of us, right? But to that teacher, changing that shoe carrier, fixing that problem, changed her entire classroom environment, saved the rest of her school year, and it's going to set her up for success again in the fall because she's going to keep that shoe carrier. She's going to know that it works. And so that's the power of evidence-based decision making, is being able to look at the problem right in front of you and create a customized, tailored, and specific solution to your problem right now.
Wow. So thinking like a scientist, going to the research to find solutions to the problems. I would have never thought about that. What a great example, Matthew. Thank you so much. So, Matthew, what are some of the key methodologies taught in the course for gathering, analyzing, and interpreting data using AI?
So this course is all set up around the tools. So as you work through the course, there's 10 modules that are going to take you through, like I said earlier, those four components of data analysis, research synthesis, ethical use, and sustainability and systems. But it's all set up around the tools. And so as you go through, you'll see video lessons and interactive activities where you will access the tool and get to kind of explore, run through a scenario. And the goal really being that at the end of the course, 2 or 3 of those tools really stick out with you as, you know, this is the tool that I really like. This is one that I can use long term. So it's really designed to give you sort of that introduction to what I think are some of the best tools available to you. Give you a chance to experiment and play with those tools in real time. I provide you with some hypothetical scenarios. Of course, once you get in, you'll have dozens of your own real world scenarios to play with. And hopefully some of those tools will stick out and can become part of your usual work routine. The other thing is I took really careful attention to make sure that all the tools in the course have a free version. So they don't cost you any money. You don't have to have a subscription. A couple of them have subscriptions for kind of advanced features, but you know, you can kind of make that judgment on your own once you get in. If you really like a tool, that extra $5.99, $10.99, whatever a month might be worth your time. But that's really for you to judge. There's a free version available for you. That was really important to me.
Beautiful. And for those who are new to this, in addition of ChatGPT, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 tools for people to explore?
So, my favorite tools are the ones that really help us scan the research literature and synthesize it faster. So, the two tools that do that the best, in my opinion, right now are Consensus AI and another tool called Elicit. And these two tools allow you to ask a question, and then they kind of read the research for you. And they say, based on your question, here's the top 10, 15, 20 articles that are going to really address your question. They both work a little bit differently. They have some different features, but they also do some summarization. And so they'll pull those key points out and say, hey, this is really the key point from this paper. And so as a leader, you can kind of scan through that and say, oh, this paper really sounds interesting. I'm going to download that one and read it first so I can prioritize my reading. I can use whatever 20 minutes I've managed to carve out in the day. I can use that time the best way possible instead of having to sift through it and pick the best article on my own.
Wow, never heard of them. I will definitely check them out,
Check them
especially
out.
that it connects the research. Beautiful. So let's talk about the ethical considerations, like how the course supports the students or the people taking the course on addressing the ethical considerations of leveraging AI in education.
Now, there's tons of ethical concerns with artificial intelligence, especially because it is so new and we're all really learning how to use it in a meaningful way in real time. So, throughout the course, ethics is addressed in every module. We address the ethics specific to whatever skill or task is being discussed in that module. And then there's also a full self standing ethics module on its own to really make sure you don't miss it. It's going to talk to you about things like understanding algorithmic bias. It's going to talk to you about how to protect student data and data privacy as you're working with some of these tools. The importance of professional judgment. You know, we should never allow our AI tools to make the decision for us. We always have to use them as tools. The tool is only as good as the user. And so that constant reminder throughout to remain a professional, to take that information, use it to inform your decision, but to ultimately make that decision and own it on your own.
Hmm. So let's explore that a little bit more
Yeah.
because um often in places there is this perception that that you may not use AIs, all these bad things, it doesn't allow you to think, etc. How would you push towards someone or an institution that says no to AI, zero, or proposing, let's use AI to try to make our society better? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so education historically is slow to adapt to changing technologies. If you ever have a boring Saturday afternoon and you're looking for some fun, nerdy activity, go back and look for newspaper articles about calculators.
Ooh.
Because you will see many of the same arguments being made about calculators back then that you're seeing being made about AI today. And so, could AI lessen the decision making process? Could AI take away some critical thinking? Absolutely. There is always space for a tool to do harm in our society and in our schools if we allow it. But ultimately, these are tools. And if we can learn how to use them and leverage them to our benefit, then we can really accelerate student learning. That's why in this course, I really focus on these research and data analysis tools. So we're not going to talk in this course about generative AI to write a research paper, because I don't believe that AI should be writing your research paper, right? That's a professional human task that requires deep synthesis, and you have to do that work on your own. But if it can help you find the articles that you need faster, if it can help you do a deeper data analysis more accurately, then I think that's great, and we should be embracing that.
Wow, that's really opening my eyes, and especially in how to respond to those type of questions because um, there's some sort of uh, group that is anti-AI, and when you mention this calculator thing, it gives me a food for thought of let me research more about that. So when people say, I can say about the calculators.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Let's take a quick pause to praise the Teach Better community.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
So Matthew, you gave a great example of the cell phone in the cases, and how the students, how they felt when they couldn't see it. But can you give another example on how AI can enhance evidence-based decision making in an educational setting?
Yeah, so I think to me, the first thing that comes to mind is speed. School leaders, classroom teachers, system leaders, they do not have a second to spare during the workday. And many of them are doing this work at night. They're doing it after dinner. They're doing it in the stadium seating at the soccer game. And that's really an unfortunate reality of the way that we have built our educational system here in the United States. And so really being able to use AI to speed this process up, I think is really where the magic is at. I also think it's a great entry point for leaders who are trying to use research in a new and different way and don't really know where to start or how to get started with that. Being able to pick one AI tool like that consensus tool that I mentioned and getting really good at using that tool to ask questions, to ponder, to find research, and to do so quickly in the flow of your day. I think that's really the key that's going to unlock this world of deeper intentional decision making for more leaders.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Matthew, what are some of the potential biases in AI that education leaders need to be aware of? And how does the course propose to mitigate them?
Yeah, so bias is a huge concern in AI because AI cannot think. And that's the thing we kind of always have to remind ourselves, right? Artificial intelligence is not intelligence. It's algorithms. It's copying, it's reading, it's taking data, it's retooling and repurposing. And so what that means is that these tools reflect the biases of the individuals who collected the data in the first place that it was trained on. So we call that algorithmic bias. That's the academic term for that phenomena. And we see it in lots of spaces. A good example of that, maybe outside of the education space, is in the sort of security and safety space. There are a number of tools that do facial recognition. But what happens is if you've got a team of practitioners, developers, software engineers who are working on that, and they don't thoughtfully include enough faces in their data set, then it's not going to recognize you. There's a really good example. I won't shout out the company, but because this is maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where they forgot to use African-American faces completely in their facial recognition software training. And so it was unable to recognize African-American faces. It only was able to recognize white and Asian faces. And so those kinds of concerns are real problems. So anywhere where you have an existing bias in a community, in a society, that bias will be reflected and potentially magnified by the AI. So how do you mitigate that? That's where your professionalism and judgment really come into play. You have to be always keenly aware of what the AI is telling you and sort of gut checking that against your professional experience. Do these numbers really look right to me based on what I've experienced, what I'm seeing in my community? They might be correct. And if they don't feel right, then there's another layer of evidence-based decision-making where maybe those still aren't the right data points for your community. But we also want to think about, are we really, are the AI outputs reflecting the biases that we're seeing in other spaces in our work? So that's where that human element, that professional judgment application really come into play.
Wow. So it's like almost you had to double check the AI. I heard the term that AI hallucinates.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what does that mean?
Yeah, so AI does this fascinating thing. This is particularly for generative AI tools, those tools that create new texts or photos. So tools that use AI to like read paper titles and kind of sort them, they're not going to hallucinate in the same way that like ChatGPT that actually creates new text is going to hallucinate. But what we mean by that is really it's making up a story. It's making up a fact. It might make up a book title or even a research citation in some of those generative AI tools. A really good example, I was playing with it the other day. I asked ChatGPT to create a list of 25 books on research use in education. And then I went and checked them, and 5 of the 25 books were hallucinated. They were fictional books, they did not exist, the authors were not real people. And so that's the kind of thing that we want to always check and be careful of in those generative AI tools. I'll also say, as an educator, that's a really important experience to have, right? Because if your students are using those generative AI tools, they're not as savvy yet, right? And you have to always stay a step ahead of them. So running those assignments through ChatGPT to see if it's going to hallucinate, how it might hallucinate, doing that all the time so that you can spot hallucination really fast is a really important element. If I were a high school teacher or principal, I would be doing that every day. I would be pulling random assignments, plugging them into ChatGPT to see what it's going to say so that I can spot it more easily in real time.
Wow, you mentioned generative AI. Is there another type of AI that you're talking about?
So, generative AI is just sort of one of many categories of artificial intelligence. So, generative AI is AI that generates a new text or image. So, that's kind of the new flashy one on the scene. The rest of our AI tools, there's lots of different names that we just kind of all call them artificial intelligence and AI. But anything that doesn't create a new text or image really isn't going to hallucinate in the same way.
I see. I see. Thank you so much. How does the course ensure that AI solutions implemented in educational settings enhance educational equity and outcomes?
I love this question. I talked about this in my book, Exploratory Data Analysis in the Classroom, that many of us are trained very superficially when it comes to using evidence and using data for equity work. We're trained to kind of line all the kids up by groups, sort the data by groups, compare this group to this group, and then make a decision. And that's really shallow and really entry level decision making. And so, what AI tools can help us to do is really do those deeper level analysis on our data, our deeper level analysis in the research to really understand what's going on between these different groups, why disparities exist, and really helping us to explore multi-layered intersectionalities where multiple identities, multiple group identities can come together to create additional challenges for certain students. These tools allow us to do that very quickly and with very little technical skill, which I think is really exciting. The other thing they allow us to do, since some of these tools can actually read the research articles and kind of help prioritize, is they help us to really identify which research is best matching for our school. So if I'm in a school that has many emergent bilingual students, then I can prioritize that by telling these tools, hey, I want to see research on this topic, but really for emergent bilingual students. And it's going to be able to prioritize that, to lift that to the top. And so I think that's a really exciting way that we can use these tools to promote equity, because we can really get to the root of our issue much faster.
Wow. My son was taking an AI class over the weekends, and the first thing that they told him is like, AI is like teaching a puppy how to breathe. You had to do everything. So having that as a metaphorical concept,
Yeah.
how can educators train AI to support, for example, like in my case, I lead a school with a lot of bilingual students, a dual language program. So if I go to, let's say, Consensus or Licit, and I'm going to try to find the best research that supports, let's say, supporting teachers in the classrooms in the dual language setting, is this just like a conversation I'm having with the AI to start supporting the system to support me in what I need?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So each tool works a little differently, which is why I really tried in the course to get as many different tools, really high quality, well developed tools as possible together in one spot. because different tools are going to have different ways of doing that. So some tools are going to still look like a traditional database. So the elicit tool kind of looks like a traditional database. The difference is, instead of using keywords and Boolean indicators and all of these different things that you learned how to do in grad school, you can actually just sort of talk to it. You can ask it a question in plain language, and it's going to pull all of that out. It's going to iterate those keywords for you. And then when you get to your display page, it's going to look very much like a traditional database with filters and buttons and options and drop downs. And that is really helpful. And so for some folks who might be intimidated by more conversational AIs, that's a good bridge, right? Because you're really just conversing through the question, and then you're defaulting back to the way that you've learned to do things before in those databases. Other tools like ChatGPT, you're going to actually talk to and have a conversation with. When I use ChatGPT, I talk to it kind of the way I would talk to a student intern in my office. So I give it very specific directions, the way I would give directions to an intern. I check its work very carefully, the way I would check the work of a student intern. And I talk to it very casually, the way I would talk to a student intern. So that's kind of the lens that I take with it. I give it feedback. So if it gives me a response and I'm like, that's not what I want, that's what I type. ChatGPT, that's not what I want. And I rephrase it just like I would rephrase for a student intern. So that's kind of how I like to think about training from a very introductory level. There are, of course, a lot of other things we can do related to prompts and repeated tasks, and really get a prompt written just right so that it spits out the same thing every time. If you've got tasks that you repeat, those tools can help you do that too, but that's a little more advanced. I think for now, users who aren't already using these AI tools need to go in and just start basic, talk to it like you would talk to a student or a student intern, and see what you get. Also, for educators, those generative tools like GPT, think about how would your students talk to ChatGPT, right? So if you've written an assignment to, write a 10-page paper about the Industrial Revolution, like, think about, what is my student going to tell ChatGPT? They're probably going to say, write a paper about the Industrial Revolution. That's what we're going to tell ChatGPT, so we can learn and see what our students are seeing and experiencing. I think that's a really important skill, so that you can spot that use later on.
That's amazing. Yeah, supporting the student on how to properly use the system in a way that will be conducive for their learning and expanding their horizons. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Matthew. So, Matthew, tell us, what tools or resources does your course provide to help leaders critically assess the impact of AI-driven decision-making processes?
So this is a really important element, because if you're not considering the impact of these tools in your classroom, then you're not really making any change, and you're not sustaining that change. And so the course does include a module that's all about systems design, and how do you plug these tools into the systems that you're using? How do you think about the sustainability of these tools? How do you evaluate the impact of your decisions that have been made using these tools? That's a really crucial element. And we're really not making decisions if we're not doing that follow through. And I always say, evidence-based decisions start with evidence, but they should also create and generate evidence on the back end. And so if you're not following through on the back end with that evaluation, you're not really being an evidence-based leader.
Wow. Thank you so much. Matthew, how do you envision AI transforming the future of educational leadership and decision-making?
I mean, AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's something that we're all going to have to learn to use effectively, to teach with, to teach through, to teach kind of against sometimes when that's appropriate. And so I think that just like 10 years ago, we didn't have computers and laptops in every kid's hand. And now, could you imagine teaching without a laptop in every kid's hand, right? It's going to be like that. I don't think it'll be 10 years. I think it'll be 2 or 3 years, because it's just moving so fast, so fast. I think that educators should embrace these AI tools. They should learn them. They should experiment with them. Summer is a great time to do that. Our schools are closing. Teachers are getting ready to enter into their summer professional learning cycles. Incorporate AI into that cycle. Experiment, play with it with just a really open mind. And you'll be more prepared to use those tools, to teach your kids to use those tools, and to spot inappropriate use of those tools in the future.
Beautiful. So, what advice then would you give to those who are hesitant, who are like, no, I don't want to go there? Like, how do you support, for example, people like me supporting people like that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing we have to do is create a safe environment for that experimentation to happen. Learning with AI is different than other kinds of learning where, you might bring a trainer in, we're going to go through some stuff. AI is really very hands-on. You have to really open the app, you have to play with it, you have to play with it for a long time, ask it lots of different kinds of questions, and really get a feel for how it's working. Again, that's why the course includes so many different tools, because different tools are going to resonate differently with different people. And so I think the best thing we can do is provide the space, provide the time, make it safe for people to experiment with AI, to screw up with AI, to share their learnings as well, to being able to model and show how they're using AI in their classrooms, AI in their school decision-making processes, and be just a little more transparent. Right now, I think that there's a little bit of kind of shame affiliated with some AI use. And I think the sooner we as a profession can shake that off and really move forward, the better we're going to be. Other professions are not feeling that shame. They are embracing these tools. They are moving forward, and they're going to just eclipse us really fast. We really need to kind of move past this and figure out how, recognize this is here to stay, and figure out how we can use it.
Beautiful. Matthew, I'm so interested. How can people register and take your class?
Yeah, so the course is available at www.matthewbcourtney.com/AI. And for all of your viewers and listeners here today, Dr. Martinez, they can get 25% off the course using the code LEADERSHIP. So trying to make that as accessible as possible. It's only $57 to begin with. So 25% off of that using the code LEADERSHIP.
Wow, amazing. And leadership, uppercase, lowercase?
It'll work either
Doesn't
way.
matter. It'll work either way. Okay, beautiful. I'll make sure I add that to the description. Matthew, it has been a luxury having you in the show. I think that innovators like you help us make a difference in the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Dr. Martinez. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraín Martinez.
Chulo.
And I love that production. Chill out.